Coming from NPR.org, Fort Bragg 2.0, Army base reverts to its old name, but with a new namesake. This is why I say pay close attention to what they're doing, because the sleight of hand is about to be top tier. Okay, all right. The U.S. Army base, formerly known as Fort Bragg, will once again bear its old name, but this time in honor of a new namesake. Because, you know, keeping the name that it was changed to, Fort Liberty, that's not going to work for the Patriots. The Fayetteville, North Carolina base was originally named after the controversial Confederate General Braxton Bragg and bore the title for a century. Although Confederates said, hey, don't erect anything in our honor, put away the flags, we are traitors, and arguably Braxton Bragg was the worst general ever. But they was fighting to get his name back on there, y'all. They have an unhealthy attachment to losers. That explains the current administration, but the Defense Department changed it to Fort Liberty in 2023 as part of a broader initiative to rename nearly a dozen military installations that had previously honored Confederate leaders. On Monday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a memorandum changing the base's name once again, this time to Fort Roland L. Bragg. Because nothing says efficiency than doing this and having so much money, time, and energy wasted in changing the name back. Just so people can say, Fort Bragg, Fort Bragg, Fort Bragg. Because they never paid attention to what the first name was in the first place. That's right. Bragg is back, Hegseth said as he signed the document on board a military aircraft in a video shared by the Department of Defense, the DoD. Bragg, a private first class with the 17th Airborne Division, isn't exactly a household name. The DoD describes him as a World War II hero who earned the Silver Star and Purple Heart for his exceptional courage during the Battle of the Bulge. The memorandum that Hegseth signed suggests the name change is both an ode to Bragg's service and the legacy of the military base at which he was stationed. Are you noticing a pattern with all these patriots? Everything is about themselves, honoring themselves in the name of patriotism. This directive honors the personal courage and selfless service of all those who have trained to fight and win our nation's wars, including Private First Class Bragg, and is in keeping with the installation's esteemed and storied history, it reads. Then stop naming things after people. If it's all about honoring servicemen and women who are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, what they signed up for, stop naming it after people, because everybody has the potential to do that. That's what happens when you join the military. You know, potentially, you could be giving your life for this country. Do what you want to do with that. I ain't doing it, but do what you want to do with that. So stop naming that. Go to names like Liberty, Patriots, patriotism, things like that. America's 743rd. Like, do it that way, if that's what it's about. But we know that's not what it's about. Now, some of you all will say, well, maybe, the family probably petitioned. This is what the family wants. Hold on. Deborah Sokol, one of Bragg's daughters, told NPR on Tuesday morning that she was surprised to learn the renaming just a few minutes earlier when another reporter called to ask about it. So no, the family didn't ask for this. Her husband, Chris Sokol, said someone from the Army had left them a message on Monday night, but they hadn't yet returned the call. He'd be very proud, she said. So they didn't even check with the family beforehand. Like, they waited to the 11th hour, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. How y'all feel about it? Like, they would have changed anything should the family have said, no, we don't want this. Told you, it's a play on words because nobody's going to pay attention to the first name because they didn't pay attention before. Not at all. Who was Roland Bragg? Bragg was born in Sabattis, Maine in 1923, and after joining the Army was assigned to the 513th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 17th Airborne Division, according to the DoD. He was stationed at Fort Bragg during World War II and ended up fighting in Europe. He earned a Civil Star for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, and a Purple Heart for wounds sustained during the Battle of the Bulge, the last major German offensive on the Western Front from December 1944 through January 1945. During these hellish conditions and amidst ferocious fighting, Private First Class Bragg saved a few soldiers' lives by commandeering an enemy ambulance and driving it 20 miles to transport a fellow wounded warrior to an Allied hospital in Belgium, the memorandum says. Bragg's daughter, Linda French, said in his 1999 obituary that he was briefly captured by the Germans but released because he and his captor were both Masons. The guy said, "Hit me over the head, take off," and he did and took off with an ambulance, she said. The vehicle came under heavy fire from both sides, Sokol said. The Americans were shooting at him because he had a German Jeep, and the Germans were shooting at him because he stole their Jeep, and he still made it to the other side, she added. Not to be that person, but to be that person, how much of this was fact-checked? How much of this was fact-checked? Because I've been around the descendants of some war vets. After the war, Bragg married and worked as a mechanic and building mover. For decades, he didn't know if any of the other passengers had survived the ambulance ordeal, which is recounted in John Eisenhower's 1995 book, The Bitter Woods, The Battle of the Bulge. Sokol said a man from California called her dad shortly in his final years. He said, "I want to meet you. You saved my life." Bragg flew out west to meet with him. Sokol, 72, says her father had PTSD and didn't speak much about the war until after that point. He died of cancer soon afterwards at age 75, leaving behind a wife, 3 daughters, and 11 grandchildren, according to his obituary. She has fond childhood memories of taking skating trips with her dad, where they would roast marshmallows and hot dogs out on the ice. Once again, who did the fact-checking for this? He always took time for his kids, she added. Now attached is some information on how name changes work. As always, you let me know your thoughts in the comments.